We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Mark White, as GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good morning. You're watching and listening to GB News. This is Saturday morning with Esther and Phil. Coming up today,
we'll be looking at the unfolding story on Merseyside, where hundreds gathered late last night outside of a hotel housing asylum seekers.
We'll also be joined by Carol Malone to look through the top stories in the newspapers, including why have young girls seemingly gone feral as we see these awful episodes of girl-on-girl attacks in and outside of our schools.
Terrible, aren't they? New Tory Deputy Chair Lee Anderson sparked a debate when he argued the death penalty should be brought back to the UK. Well, we'll be having our own debate here on GB News.
So as ever, we want to hear your views this morning. If you want to get involved in the show, email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. But before we start, here you are with the latest headlines with Ray.
Good morning. 1 minute past 10, here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. The death toll from Monday's deadly earthquakes in southern Turkey and northern Syria has now surpassed 24,000. Despite the conditions, rescuers continue to find some survivors in the rubble more than 120 hours since the disaster struck. Meanwhile, Turkey's President Erdogan has said authorities should have reacted faster. Reyhan Basin is a Turkish journalist. She told us the country was not prepared despite warnings.
Thousands of buildings have been collapsed. So where are they going to put all these debris away? And of course, like graveyards, morgues, these are all huge problems right now. Turkey wasn't prepared for this, even though people were warning about this. Like professors, they warned about this upcoming earthquake.
Well, meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council is set to hold talks next week on delivering aid to rebel-held areas in Syria. Currently, help to the northwest of the country can only be delivered by one Turkish border crossing. Syria's ally Russia does not back the aid expansion, saying it goes against the country's sovereignty. However, the UN Secretary-General says the Council has been too slow to act. The Shadow Home Secretary has described protests outside a migrant hotel in Merseyside as shameful and appalling. Yvette Cooper made the comments after 3 people were arrested on suspicion of violent disorder in Knowsley. Witnesses described the scene as being like a war zone as demonstrators threw missiles and set fire to a police van. Security has been increased following the incident with reinforced fencing and a police presence. Local MP Sir George Howarth says the protest was triggered by misinformation claiming refugees were feather-bedded. The Education Secretary could be set to challenge the Home Office's plans to cut migration. Speaking to the Financial Times, Gillian Keegan described the financial boost from international students to British universities as hugely valuable. She wants to increase the revenue they bring from around £26 billion to £35 billion by 2030. However, the Home Secretary is currently reviewing the eligibility of students' work visas and their ability to bring dependents to Britain. As the search for missing mum Nicola Bulley enters its 16th day, her partner says his gut instinct tells him she did not fall into the river. Paul Ansell told 5 News he wants to keep all options open about her disappearance. Lancashire police say they suspect the mother of 2 fell into the River Wyre, but no trace of her has been found. They're now focusing their search further downstream and out towards the coast. Well, a World War II bomb has exploded in Great Yarmouth. The blast happened as attempts were being made to disarm the explosives. Norfolk police say no one was hurt. Emergency services declared a major incident on Tuesday after the bomb was discovered during dredging work in the River Yare. The US military has shot down an unidentified flying object over Alaska. President Joe Biden made the decision to bring down the craft, which is the size of a small car. The UFO, which was flying at 40,000 feet, was considered a risk to passenger jets. It follows the downing last week of a Chinese surveillance balloon, which was flying over the United States. And the coronation emblem for King Charles and the Queen Consort has now been unveiled. It was created by former Apple designer Sir Joni Ive. It features an image of St Edward's crown, which will be used to crown the monarch and was inspired by the King's love of nature. The emblem also includes the Rose of England, the Thistle of Scotland, the Daffodil of Wales and the Shamrock of Northern Ireland. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get straight back to Esther and Phil.
Thank you, Ray. We're going to start the show today by looking at events from last night on Merseyside, where, as Ray mentioned there, 3 people have now been arrested after a protest outside of a hotel housing asylum seekers. GB News national reporter Paul Hawkins joins us in the studio with the latest on this unfolding story.
Yeah, so let's just try and piece together what happened last night. So police called at 6:30 to the Suites Hotel in the Ribblers Lane area of Knowsley to what they describe as an initially peaceful protest. These protesters, and according to eyewitnesses, there were hundreds of them, had gathered after they heard what were described as claims about the behaviour of some asylum seekers staying in the hotel towards young girls. These are just claims. We haven't been able to verify those, but there was a protest nonetheless, and it started peacefully. What seems to have happened is there was a counter-protest as well by organisations supporting refugees, such as Care for Calais. Now, their founder, Claire Mosley, is reported to have described it as a war zone, so that she was shocked and shaken to see hundreds of what she described as far-right protesters who were organised and violent, in her words, breaking through police lines around 8:15. There were missiles thrown at the police. A police van was set on fire. We're talking about things like bottles, paving stones, rocks and sticks that were thrown at the police, which you can see pictures of Now 3 people arrested on suspicion of violent disorder, and eventually calm was restored once they closed the roads and more police officers were drafted in. Now, Merseyside police say thankfully no one was injured, but missiles were thrown, and they're urging anyone with any information to get in touch with them. The local Labour MP, Sir George Howarth, has said that until the police have investigated the matter, he says it's too soon to jump to any conclusions. The effort on the part of some to inflame the situation is emphatically wrong, and both he and Councillor Graham Morgan, the leader of Knowsley Council, have said that these kind of people protesting do not represent the community. He says he's deeply saddened by what he's seen, and Councillor Graham Morgan also saying, the leader of the council, this kind of behaviour is not welcome here, and mindless acts of a small minority destroy our community spirit and willingness to support others when in need.
The claim there from Care for Calais, where the founder there was saying it was far right. Is there any sort of verification of that? Is that true as well? Just like we don't know what sparked the incident? I mean, this is inflaming the situation by suggesting who it was who started it as well.
Yeah, we don't know for certain that they are far right, because only 3 people have been arrested and the police are making further lines of inquiry as to what exactly happened. So we're still trying to establish the facts. But the claim is that they were far right protesters. The claim is that these asylum seekers did something. There's a lot of hearsay here and there's very little truth going around. So it's difficult to get to the nub of what's happening yet. And that's what the police will be trying to establish.
So I guess we don't even know whether they were local people or whether they'd come in from somewhere else to protest.
Yeah.
We don't know any of this at the moment.
No, we don't yet, no.
But we'll be bringing, or you'll be bringing us up to date throughout the day with the news as it unfolds, the latest on this situation. Paul, thank you very much indeed. Now, Carol, when we see these incidents on the streets here of the UK, people we've brought into the country, we've housed in hotels, there's a definite sort of unhappiness bubbling up when we're seeing hundreds of people being put in hotels in the centre of communities. We don't know what sparked this, but there's definitely unhappiness, isn't there?
This is frustration at an out-of-control immigration system. I have seen this myself. I've seen it in London. I was walking down a street in Kensington a couple of weeks ago, and I saw a hotel. It was 2 hotels next to each other, and there were lots of asylum seekers outside. They were obviously housed in that hotel. There was probably 20, 25 of them standing there, all smoking. And what I saw really shocked me, actually. I saw young women walking past, and these guys whistling and leering and shouting, and there were 5 policemen out there. And I thought to myself, my God, where do you see 5 cops together in London, patrolling crime? Here they were having to patrol these guys. Now, we also have heard reports, and I'm glad you brought up the far right thing. People in a community protesting about asylum seekers in their area, have every right to do so. It doesn't mean they're far right, and it doesn't mean they're unsympathetic to genuine asylum seekers. We have to point that out. But I think what we have seen over recent months, there were stories in various towns and cities where asylum seekers were being put into hotels. Gangs of single men were roaming round town at night time, frightening the women in that town. Now, that is a fact, and people can call that far right if they want. It's not. It's a fact, and cops are having to be deployed to protect women in those circumstances.
And it's the number of people right in the middle of towns and cities, and a large number now in the middle of towns. And these people have nothing really they can do as well. They just sit in the hotels, as you say, sat outside with nothing to do because there isn't anything they are allowed to do.
The people who are frightening the women, they're not genuine asylum seekers who've come over here with their families who are looking for shelter. That's not those people. This is the gangs of single blokes who are arriving here. And as you say, they've got nothing to do. We know for a fact that crime is... We know that some of these people, there was a report a week ago saying that some young men were being taken from boats. They're just disappearing once they got into a centre. Just disappearing, being taken away by what is believed to be Albanian contacts to work in crime, to work in gangs. And we're seeing this in other countries. It's not just happening here.
Now, the other issue you wanted to talk about in a much more positive light was that speech this week by Zelensky in Westminster Hall in the House of Parliament.
Completely moved me to tears, because, I've written on my column today that it's hard to define what a leader is until you see one. And I think we saw one in the shape of I can't pronounce his first name, Vladimir Zelensky. He just, he came here full of humility and respect and gratitude, and he's begging for his country. He's begging for planes for his country. And he's doing it in the most wonderful way. And, he paid tribute to Boris, which I thought was quite right, because if Boris hadn't got on this at the start, they wouldn't have any support now. And that is a fact. And people can argue that all they want, but it is a fact. But I just thought it was so moving, and all the while he's talking, blood is still being spilled in his country, and he doesn't have the weapons to stop it happening.
Now, we had a debate last week on our channel about whether or not we should still be giving support to Ukraine, and I was quite surprised at the number of our viewers who came and contacted us to say, look, we've got plenty of problems ourselves, we've done our bit. We can't keep doing this indefinitely.
You see, it's easy to say that.
Do you not think that public opinion's changing a bit on this?
No, it might well be, but it's wrong that it is, because even if you don't care about what's happening in Ukraine, even if you think that's another world, another land, the bottom line is, if Putin wins there's nothing to stop him walking into any other liberal democratic country and taking it. It's not that far from us.
Equally, the public might be saying, do you know what? You're right, the Brits were there first. We gave support first. We're doing as much as we possibly can. We're not seeing Germany. They seem to be dragging the feet. We're not seeing France. They've been dragging the feet. It's been very piecemeal. We never finished it maybe as quickly as it could have been because the support has been bit by bit. And now they see a stalemate. And all of a sudden, the public saying, this isn't going to be over quickly. We could be here for many, many years. And that, at a time of a massive cost of living issues, could be straining the patience.
That, and I get why people are worried about that. But the bottom line is, if we give them enough weapons, it will be finished quickly. If we give them in dribs and drabs, it's going to drag on for years, increasing the danger to this country and others. We've got to stop listening to people going, we're going to drop a nuclear bomb. That's just not going to happen. But I just think, we sit at home here at night time and we have our glass of wine and we have our bag of crisps and we have our dinner and we think, oh, well, that's not our problem. Wait till it comes here or to another country that's closer to us. I'm married to a Bosnian and I watched it happen in Bosnia and I watched inaction in Bosnia and I saw what happened, and the slaughter was terrible.
I'm going to talk about another form of inaction which I saw and I couldn't believe it, and this is this story now of feral girls. We're seeing girl-on-girl attacks inside schools, outside schools. They are absolutely vicious. And I'm wondering what has happened to our 13 and 14-year-old girls to make them do such vicious attacks on one another. You're seeing them beaten, they're seeing pulling out the hair. The ones in school, we saw that in Fife, nobody seemed to be doing anything. It was a sort of a nonchalance as a girl was ripped off her seat. And I'm not joking when I say the other girl was kicking her head in. It was horrendous. And then we've seen this one most recently in Ashford, outside the school.
Is this something, though, that's always happened and that we're just now seeing film of it and people doing it on their phones because in a way that you never would have done before? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking the question, is this something really new?
No, I think you're spot on. Do you remember the ladette culture a few years ago? But you're right there, because what wasn't around a few years ago was social media, and what wasn't around was the photographs. And, the thing about social media, kids are now seeing live violence on social media.
Here are some of the shots of that live violence. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, does this girl kicking her head in think she's some sort of kickboxer looking for fame? I mean, what is it? And they're all goading them, cheering them on. Nobody's stopping, not even adults stopping this, acts of violence.
Social media's bad enough, but in movies, and this is something I've noticed recently, you see women, fighting, you see them killing people with knives, you see them fighting with their fists, you see them throwing bombs, and the women in those films turn out, the message is you can be violent but you can still be a hero. That's being pumped out to kids every single day, and that's what you're saying there. You're saying kids thinking, I'm going to be a hero at the end of this. And what they're not understanding, there was a woman in one of the attacks, I think the woman who was inciting the violence, she was shouting to these other girls, kick her face in. The idea, does anybody know what a kick in the face actually does to someone's face?
And that is so, how can I say, to a woman, to her face as well. And maybe I shouldn't say that there's a difference, but I think there is a difference. I think that's horrendous.
We've got all this big thing at the moment about violence against women and girls, and the idea that this is a gendered crime, that violence against women and girls is something done by men to women and girls. Does this not slightly drive a coach and horses through that actually women and girls can be just as violent to other women and girls.
We kind of want to believe as a society, don't we, that women can't be really hardened criminals, that women can't be really violent. But the fact is, what we're seeing here, we're seeing kids of 13, 14, 15 being conditioned to think that's OK. And, there's part of me thinks that, when it's happening in schools, teachers are no longer allowed to lay hands on pupils. So even if there is a fight, what can they do? If they get involved, if they hit a pupil, slap a pupil, whatever in the melee, they know they're going to get fired for that. So teachers don't have any power anymore. The police don't have any power anymore. So there's no consequences for these kids.
Those who are the adults have been enfeebled,
Yes,
and those who are the children have somehow been emboldened. This is a mistake.
Now, I want to get your view on this, Carol, because I was impressed with this guy. I saw it in the Mirror earlier this week. It's a chap called Stephen Doherty, who received a £240 fine for taking his 13-year-old son on holiday during term time. And now he's written to the school asking for all the teachers who should have taught Alfie, his son, who didn't show up in term time to go on strike, to also pay a fine. And he sent in his payment details to say, this is where you can pay the money. Now, it said in the Mirror he'd sparked a backlash by saying this. I was actually completely with him on that.
I'm cheering him. I'm internally cheering him right now.
Why is it wrong for parents to take their kids out of school in term time, but absolutely fine for teachers to go out of school on term?
You're completely right. I mean, I'm absolutely cheering him for that. This is good because, this parent pays taxes to pay teachers. And the fact that they're walking out and abandoning kids at a vital time, there's COVID, they're approaching exams in the summer now, he's completely right to say, hang on, we have rights too. Yes, I mean...
So, you see, I love the logic of his argument. If you're fining me, I will fine you. We'll see where we go from here. So, in our entirety, we were cheering him on.
Exactly. So I don't know where the backlash was coming from teachers, probably, but not from parents.
But the backlash is probably because you shouldn't have taken these kids out of school in term time. I mean, you shouldn't. Your kids should be in school.
We get that. Quid pro quo, though.
You can't moan about teachers striking, not educating your kids if you're taking them on holiday. But however, I'm glad that he's taken a stand.
Absolutely. Well, look, Carol's staying with us. We want to hear your views on some of those big stories of the day and the unfolding story on Merseyside. We'll keep you up to speed on that. But coming up after the break, we'll be talking to 2 Ukrainian refugees who have set up a business here in the UK after fleeing the war-torn country. That is definitely triumph over adversity, so don't go anywhere.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's almost 10:22. Now, 2 Ukrainian women who were forced to flee their country after Putin launched his invasion last year have achieved their dream of starting a business. But they've had to do so here in the UK.
Yes, best friends Anna Sturmak and Anastasia Berest moved in with a host family in Manchester back in May of last year and said setting up a business in a foreign country has been far from easy. And we're delighted to say they join us here. So this really is a triumph over adversity story, Anna and Anastasia there. So do you want to tell us how you got going? I mean, could you speak English when you started? How did you get going and who helped you set up your business?
Hello. When we came here, it was difficult for us in the beginning, but in the most cases, our host helped us a lot. It was a huge work for them, I think, but we feel comfortable. Everything was perfect for us. They introduced us to a lot of people. They tried to help with their English language, with their settled here, and of course with our dream. And they support us really a lot, and we appreciate it. And we're so happy that definitely this family chose us.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the beginning, it was so difficult about English. We didn't know how it works. We didn't know about taxes, how we can, speak with our post office, with our suppliers. But I don't know. I think you just need to have a risk and to try to do it.
Tell us about your business. What does your business do?
So we make candles. We make everything here in this room. It's our laboratory. So we pour in wax, we feel it. We choose wicks, so we do everything. We test it a lot. All magic happen in this place. And in the beginning, we wanted to create the products which we would buy ourselves, like about everything, about the tape, stickers, packing. We wanted that people like it.
And in another, I guess, what's gone on in your life and in your world. What about what's happening in Ukraine? Are you going back? Have you got family there? How is that situation unfolding?
Our family in Ukraine, and we hope we will soon back to Ukraine when the war will finish.
Yeah, because every morning we wake up and first act which we do, it's like go to our news and read what happened, what can happen, of course, and if it's some alarm in our city, of course, we immediately wrote our friends, family, close, relatives. So it makes it stress still, of course.
Zelensky was here this week in Parliament. Is he as big a hero to you? Did you see the appreciation he got in the House of Parliament? And is there a message to the people of this country and to the parliamentarians here from yourselves?
Yeah, I think he's a hero for all Ukrainians. Yeah. So he did a lot, and he tried to do the best. It's our opinion.
Well, Anna and Anastasia, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We wish you every success for your business in the UK. We hope at some point it's safe for you to go back to the Ukraine and you can have a business that thrives there as well. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us and good luck for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Isn't that wonderful? It is
It's
triumph
terrific,
over.
isn't it?
And
Yes,
how
it
they've
is.
come over here, couldn't speak the English, but they said thank you to the hosts who were fantastic. They found an accountant who was a Ukrainian accountant who'd been here for 20 years, and they helped them get the business going.
A terrific work ethic.
Terrific work ethic.
Shining example to many people in this country, I would say. How about you? Anyway, let's now welcome GB News political reporter Olivia Utley. Olivia, thank you for joining us. We were wondering about the budget coming up for the government, and there's obviously all this criticism of the government for having high taxes, and we were wondering, is Jeremy Hunt going to be able to get higher taxes through Parliament when the budget comes round in March?
Well, Jeremy Hunt is certainly facing enormous amounts of pressure, pretty much from all sides now. We heard a couple of weeks ago that the Conservative Growth Coalition, as it's styling itself, essentially a caucus of MPs led by Liz Truss, who think that the high taxes that are being introduced by Rishi Sunak and...
Olivia, I'm going to just stop you just frequently, just for a second. Can you turn on your mic? And then we had the growth group on. We had Ranil here as one of the key people of that growth group to talk about it, to tell the news first here on GB News. But you were saying,
yeah. So we've got this growth caucus, which is putting massive amounts of pressure on Rishi Sunak. Simon Clarke has also set up a Conservatives, young generation Conservatives group who believe that low taxes are the only way to win an election and to get the country growing again. Then you've got the CBI now putting pressure on Rishi Sunak not to raise corporation tax. We've seen that very depressing decision from AstraZeneca not to set up its new building in the northeast of England, but to go to Ireland instead, where corporation tax is lower. So you've got lots and lots of pressure there coming from pretty much all sides. And it's not just corporation tax, it's various other tax rises too, these stealth tax rises which we keep hearing about, which would pull many more working people into higher income tax brackets. Now, you wouldn't have to have that many Conservative MPs opposing these sort of tax rises if Labour decided to vote against the government. Whether Labour will do that, it isn't quite clear yet. Keir Starmer, as we know, sometimes enjoys a little bit of fence-sitting. He has been previously quite stringent on being pro the increase in corporation tax. He said before that the experiment, George Osborne's experiment for lowering corporation tax, hasn't paid dividends. But now we're seeing these decisions from AstraZeneca, that position is looking a bit more wobbly. And if Keir Starmer sees it as a political opportunity to show Rishi Sunak's weakness in his own party, then he might just take that opportunity, seize it, and see if he can stop this plan getting through Parliament.
It's slightly bizarre, isn't it, when we're talking about whether or not a Conservative government should be cutting taxes or not and getting pressure, and it would be the irony of all ironies, wouldn't it, if Labour voted to cut taxes and the Conservative government were voting to increase them.
But it is these siren calls now that are coming from anywhere. Remember, everybody's been listening to what the various sort of organisations have said, and they all said you've got to stabilise the economy, you've got to watch at inflation. So they were doing that, weren't they? We were looking at inflation. Now things have spun pretty much on ahead with this £300 million investment from AstraZeneca, who said, no, we're going to Ireland. And all of a sudden people are saying, no, that corporation tax, just don't do that increase. So it's interesting how things are changing on a daily basis, and maybe Jeremy could be swift of foot and not do that. Be interesting to see how it rolls out. But there are clouds gathering, aren't there, for Rishi Sunak with all of these groups in the Conservative Party?
Yeah, certainly. And Rishi Sunak was never in that strong a position when he came to office in the first place, because although he did have the support of MPs largely, he was the most popular among MPs, it still wasn't by any means a sort of slam dunk, if you like, appointment. And he didn't have the support of the wider party. And that wider party is definitely showing some forms of restlessness at the moment. And Jeremy Hunt, we saw him out yesterday painting this image that the country hasn't sunk into recession as a positive for the government. His argument is that Rishi Sunak and himself managed to stabilise the markets, and because of that, we're now not into recession. But there are plenty who'll look at those figures and see, yes, we haven't managed to get it. We've managed just about to avoid recession by a whisker, but the broad brush image is that growth in the UK is stagnating, and we've
but
got
still doing better than many other countries. I think we always look at it through one prism, don't we? It is doing well, and you could look at it the other way and say it's doing well. We've stabilised it, so now change what you need to do.
Absolutely, and as Jeremy Hunt said yesterday, we've got some of the fastest growth in the G7. But on the other hand, if you do compare it with other countries, you do have a problem with investment in UK businesses. Our investment levels are now lower than pre-pandemic, whereas almost every other developed country is seeing higher investment levels in business than in any other country, which will give sort of fuel to the fire of those conservative growth groups who are arguing for lower corporation tax.
Now, getting back to the politics of this, there's been talk that the growth group was just a vehicle to sort of push Liz Truss and try and rehabilitate her reputation and as a threat to Rishi Sunak. I'm seeing it slightly differently now. I think it seems that Rishi Sunak's position is actually somewhat more secure now. And I read in the Eye today, it says that Tory MPs demanding Rishi Sunak embrace more ambitious pro-growth policies have distanced themselves from Liz Truss, insisting they're not continuing her political agenda in the wake of her return to the front line.
And Ranil on this show was very clear to say there was all MPs there. She might be supporting it, she wasn't involved. There was an element that we are independent from Liz.
Yeah. Absolutely, but I think, if anything, that makes Rishi Sunak's position more precarious, because there was a moment when it seemed as though perhaps we would see a huge number of MPs sort of rally round Liz Truss as the figure to bring forward a low tax agenda again. But that has frayed very quickly, and instead what we're seeing is a pretty well-organised group, not in thrall to one particular figure, but a well-organised group calling for low taxes. And that, in a way, is more powerful, because Rishi Sunak can't sort of shout down Liz Truss's tenure as sort of hopeless. Instead, he has to sort of address
the ideology that lots of
ideology that's being brought forward.
So other things that put Rishi in a precarious situation now is the Privileges Committee and the case for Partygate for Boris, because it seems to me this is disappearing. There is no smoking gun. Boris could be his big issue on the backbenchers coming forward after what will be a bad set of local elections.
Well, absolutely, and the Partygate investigation has sort of been bubbling away under the surface for a while now, and there are lots of Boris Johnson allies who sort of waiting for the results of this investigation to decide how to proceed. And what we're hearing this morning is that it was assumed that when the Partygate investigation took place, anyone who wanted to give evidence would be able to have anonymity. Now it's been revealed that they won't be able to have anonymity, which obviously is leading lots of players.
Which was a very clever move by Lord Panic, wasn't it, who made sure those conditions were put in place before this began, that anonymity would not be allowed.
Which makes things trickier for those who want to come forward, and it's thought that that'll mean that fewer people come forward in this investigation. And as you say, it could be that this investigation, which we've waited so long for, just sort of melts away, leaving Boris Johnson in quite a powerful position. And when you have President Zelensky standing up in the House of Commons and thanking Boris Johnson personally for leading the West response to Ukraine, you know, he's not a Prime Minister who's just going to fade away into the background.
It all goes on in our workplace. Let me tell you, we've got so much that's going on there.
I think, though, the public just want us to get on and run the country properly and deliver for them, rather than all this sort of party political machinations and who's up and who's down.
If you really cared about the public, you shouldn't be Keir Starmer saying, oh, how do I politically get one over on the Tory party? If we need low taxation to get investment, you should say, this is what we need to do. And the Tory party need to do that, need to crack on. Olivia Utley, thank you very much indeed. As always, got the inside track of what's going on in Parliament. Now, coming up after the break, we'll be debating Lee Anderson's comments about whether the death penalty should be brought back. First, we've got the weather, so don't go anywhere.
Good morning and welcome to your latest weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Now, the rest of this weekend is going to stay quite mild and dry across the UK, and that's because we've got this mild Atlantic air being brought up by this large area of high pressure from the near continent. That's going to push any weather fronts to skirt across the north of the UK as well, so plenty of dry weather to come. Has been a rather mild start to the day, though, and that's because we've got a blanket of cloud that will dominate through much of the weekend. There will be some sunshine breaking out here and there by the afternoon. This is most likely across parts of Northern Ireland as well as eastern areas of England and Scotland. And in any of that sunshine, it will feel quite warm for the time of year, highs of 12 or possibly 13 degrees by Saturday afternoon. Then as we head through the evening, it's going to stay quite cloudy for the bulk of the UK. We could see the return of some rain and drizzle to the northwest of Scotland. Some clear spells will develop across parts of Wales as well as northeastern Scotland, and that will allow a bit of a chillier night, so a touch of frost is possible here and there by Sunday morning, but for many areas we're going to be well above freezing with all that cloud around. So another cloudy start to the day tomorrow, and that will persist through much of the day, particularly for more eastern areas this time on Sunday, with the best of the sunshine breaking out across the west by the afternoon. So Wales, as well as parts of Devon and Cornwall, will see some decent sunshine by the time we get to Sunday afternoon. And once again, it's going to feel quite pleasant in that sunshine, highs of 11 or 12 degrees. A little bit of a cooler feel, though, in the east with a bit more cloud persisting. Now, high pressure dominates through next week as well, with a little bit more sunshine with some slightly fresher air arriving and temperatures around average, if not a little bit above.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10:40. Lots of you have been getting in touch this morning, Phil.
Yes, Susan says the media are quick to label people far right when they're not. They're local people who have had enough of not having a say to what happens in their local community. As for the so-called Care for Calais, all they're doing is inflaming the situation. I fear it's going to escalate all over the country. People have had enough.
We did ask that question, didn't we? And Dave says, your headline news is covering the protest in Knowsley without looking at the backstory of why those people are protesting. It's because illegal immigrants from the hotel were caught on video propositioning underage girls and a couple trying to abduct young children. Knowsley is Labour's safest seat, so it's hardly a right-wing protest. Oh,
and
those views coming in.
David asks, what are Care for Calais doing in Knowsley?
Well, I was wondering the same thing, David. What were they doing there?
Good question. Now, The Taxi Charity, an organisation that helps veterans return to places like Normandy for commemorations, is celebrating its 75th anniversary.
Yesterday, London black taxi drivers joined veterans at a location in central London to mark the milestone. GB News London reporter Lisa Harter went to meet one of the veterans, helped by the charity.
This was in 1944, just before D-Day. My parents insisted I go to a studio, photographic studio, to have a photograph taken. I think that was in case I didn't come back.
For veterans like Mervyn, the Taxi Charity provides a link to the past, a chance to return to places like Normandy for D-Day commemorations and pay their respects to fallen comrades.
It's a lot. I've been several times now, over a few years, but as I've always said, going there, it's being able to come back again, where so many of my comrades are still there. It brings it home, what could have been. More than it did at the time, actually. And we couldn't do it without the taxis. I don't think I could manage on the ferry or by air. Not anymore, anyway. I'm 98 now.
Mervyn was just 19 years old when he was first deployed during the Second World War. Serving with the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, he went into Normandy on D-Day, a treacherous trip having lost comrades the day before when their boat was hit by a torpedo.
They heard the big shells going from our huge warships to the land and from the Germans back at the warships. Nobody bothered with me, thank goodness. They thought I wasn't worth bothering with. But it was very frightening, and it literally did get frightened. That's the first time I took out my book of Psalms, was reading them.
The Taxi Charity for Military Veterans is celebrating its 75th year. Run by London black taxi drivers, it's been supporting thousands of veterans since 1948.
We look after any veterans that need our help. We take them around the UK, and now, the last 10, 15 years, we've been taking them back to the Netherlands and to Normandy to pay respects to their fallen comrades who are still there. It gives them a chance to get to see their friends again. Only veterans understand what veterans think and how veterans feel. We as taxi drivers, and you and me, unless you've walked in their shoes, you have no idea how they feel and how they think. So for them to get back together again with their comrades, it means a lot to them. And as the years go by and they get fewer and fewer, it's more and more special for them.
Mervyn now writes poems to reflect on his time during the war.
I'll go again to Normandy, where I was once before, but then I was in uniform in June of '44.
The charity will be celebrating its anniversary with several events, raising money to ensure veterans like Mervyn can continue to pay their respects to those who never returned home.
I'm not a hero, despite the medals that I wear. They merely mean that these I have just prove that I was there.
Lisa Hartle, GB News, London.
And a big hello to Mervyn there, because I know he was watching this going out. And as we jumped our taxi to get to the studio first thing this morning, the taxi driver also was a part of this amazing charity. So really heartwarming, that. It is. Brilliant. Absolutely. And to hear, I say stories, they're not the actual things that they went through and endured in their life. It's really important we do. Now, look, new Deputy Tory Chairman, Lee Anderson, has found himself in hot water after saying he would support the return of the death penalty.
Speaking in an interview just days before he was appointed to the role, the Ashfield MP said that nobody's ever committed a crime after being executed. The comments have been widely criticised, with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak saying neither he nor the government share Lee Anderson's stance.
But joining us now for a discussion about the comments and whether the death penalty should be brought back is the Deputy Leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane, and human rights lawyer Diana Constantini. So hello to you both. So let's go back to Lee Anderson's comments. And I wonder if there is a shift now in public opinion when they're seeing violence on the street, murders happening, that actually they're saying maybe the time is right to bring back the death penalty. If I go to you first, Rebecca Jane.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I do agree. I think that his comment is a little crass. But I do support bringing back the death penalty. And I do that because, you know, we have now got a snowflake epidemic on our hands. People are not as afraid of consequences, and we have a lack of boundaries. It is widely known that our criminal justice system is more of a soft touch. So obviously there is an argument for the fact of, well, we've had wrongful convictions in the past, but we certainly are more advanced today. We have DNA technology, and we have advanced investigation techniques. And then we've got to look at the cost on society. So in Woodhill Prison, it costs around £90,000 per year to keep a prisoner. I look at people like Ian Brady, and that's a classic example case of where I would want the death penalty brought back. He cost between 10 and 14 million to keep him alive when there was no doubt about his conviction. What do you prefer, 6 nurses per year or keeping Ian Brady alive? I know what I prefer.
So, Diana, has Rebecca been able to persuade you of that case in any regard?
Not at all. And as we're speaking, and every day, there are people executed and sentenced to death by the state for a punishment, or to actually punish people for criminal offences, such as, for example, murder, terrorism-related offences, and various others, or even crimes that they shouldn't be criminalised, such as, for example, homosexual couples. Now, I will ask for all of us to take a step back and reflect on history. I do have listened very carefully to the comments made and the points that have been made, but this is not something that happened from one day to another. Death penalty has been there for 1,000 years, and it has been abolished in the United Kingdom on the 13th of August 1964 at 8 a.m. It was the last death sentence that this country has seen. And today there are 108 countries that they have abolished death penalty by law. It is not the answer to answer with violence, and death penalty, it's an infringement of human rights, of the life, and most importantly, is an inhuman way to do so. But also, I would like to speak under my personal...
Sorry, no, go ahead. I think you were going to talk about your personal situation. Go ahead.
Diane, your personal situation.
So, as I said... Yes. So on the 6th of June 1993, my mother was murdered in the Republic of Cyprus by 2 serial killers. And I've lived through my whole life and people discussing about whether death penalty is the answer. So through my professional, but also under my personal capacity, I completely disagree with introducing and reinstigating death penalty, because it is not the answer of an advanced nation. It is not the answer of respecting human rights.
So, Rebecca, I mean, I guess Diana's point is that the state executing people is something that you would expect from sort of a more backward country, perhaps, not something that you should expect to see in an advanced country. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that's the point here, is that we are a very advanced country. We have advanced investigation techniques. We have DNA. We are, but not only that, the moral side of what we're looking at here. We're not going to be a nation that executes people for, being in a homosexual couple. That's not what we're about. It would be reserved for only the most toughest of crimes. We are not these countries, so we can't compare. It's like comparing, two things that are completely uncomparable. And I think that your personal experiences are absolutely awful, and I'm very sorry for the experience that you have. And I absolutely respect your opinion as well. But I also think that, many people who have been in your position would also take our stance too. So we could all differ on everything in life. But in this case, the United Kingdom is a wonderful country. We're a civilised country, and we're not going to do this,
Diana, what Rebecca's saying is that we've now got advanced technology, we've got DNA, forensic science. The chances of getting the wrong person now have virtually been eliminated. And that, why should a serial killer, why should sort of, the Yorkshire Ripper who terrorised my part of the world for years, women in that part of the world, why should somebody like that be allowed to carry on with any kind of life after they've taken away callously the life of so many other people? Isn't the death penalty a fair punishment?
No, it's not. And I'm every day in court, and I do come from a criminal practice as well. And with all due respect to the English criminal justice system, there are discrepancies, there are mistakes, and we need to be very careful when we do speak about instigating death penalty. And definitely, I can do say that it is not the answer. There are other ways that we can.
Diana, can I ask you a question? What would the deterrent be? Is it that life should mean life, therefore, if it's not the death penalty, it means they are locked up for the rest of their days? What do we do to make the people on the streets, people going about their life and their business, feel safe? What is the deterrent against murderers?
I believe life imprisonment, it's the way that we should do it. And of course, to have measures in place to safeguard the criminal justice system, whereby a fair trial takes place. And there is a lot that comes with a fair trial. So we need, the government needs to fund further, for example, legal aid policies. That is very topical now, to ensure that happens.
Rebecca, would you say if life meant life and everybody who was convicted of murder actually served the whole of their rest of their life in prison, would that mean that you'd be happy at that point to drop your call for the death penalty to be brought back?
No, I wouldn't. I think that life should mean life anyway. But I think that the death penalty needs reserving for the most special cases. Ian Brady, you know, the killer of Lee Rigby. You know, we're not talking about cases where there is any dispute whatsoever, and it is where they don't show any remorse. It is serial child murderers, things like that. I don't want to keep them in a prison. I want to see more nurses. I want to see more doctors. I want to see more reinvestment into our country. And that's far better than keeping these people that will never, ever have a chance of being rehabilitated still in our prison system.
Rebecca Jane, Diana Constantine, thank you very much indeed for your time today and for taking part in that debate. It's a fascinating debate. I'm sure lots of our viewers have got their own opinion.
I think so. I think when people feel, you know, do the police have the powers to stop and arrest and control things? Are we putting people behind bars for as long as possible and not letting them out early? Have we got people coming out of prison, which we know we have, who've committed murders and then gone on to commit murders and crime again? I think people, out of exasperation, are saying, do you know what, we need the ultimate, you know, penalty which would deter people from doing anything.
I think we should always remember that roughly, I think since the death penalty was abolished, about 2 people a year have been killed by somebody who's been released from prison who had been previously convicted of murder, including, I might add, I had a 10-year-old boy in my constituency who was abducted and raped by somebody who was a convicted murderer and was released from prison. If he'd have been faced the death penalty, my 10-year-old constituent would never have had that traumatic
And these are real stories. These are real stories.
So we've got to look at all of these things. We'd love to know your views. Tell us what you think.
Now, we've got a couple of minutes left in the hour, and as you know, GB News is the People's Channel. The most important are your voices, and we're delighted to say that we're now joined by some GB viewers, Gary, Martin and Helen Fawcett. So I'm going to go to you straight away, Gary. You were listening, you saw the debate there. If they're coming up, here he is, Gary. I mean, what do you think about the death penalty? I know it's been raised in everybody's consciousness this week after what Lee Anderson said. What do you think? Do you think people are now thinking maybe this is the way forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think Lee Anderson, I think he speaks for ordinary, decent people. You know, in special cases, there is a need for the death penalty. I mean, you know, child molesters, child killers and that sort of thing. But when it's beyond doubt, you know, the Lee Rigby case, for instance, you know, that was all caught on CCTV, you know, and they're spending the rest of their lives in prison. And really, that's a great case. You know, it's an excellent example when you know, the death penalty could be used. I mean, it costs millions and millions of pounds to keep someone in prison for life. And, you know, I think in those sort of cases, there is a need for it. And I think Lee Anderson is a good man. I think he says the right things. I really do.
Helen, let me bring you in. I think you're there in Wales, if I'm correctly informed. How's things going in Wales? What do you make of the Welsh government over there? Are they doing a good job, or would you rather the powers were back with the UK government?
Oh, most definitely. I'd rather be ruled by London. I'm very disillusioned with devolution. It's not working for a lot of businesses. Our health, education is so badly run. They are just not capable of sorting these problems out in Cardiff. I am concerned about the breakup of the UK, that if Scotland decides to go independent, then the next thing will be that Wales will want to do similar. And that really does concern me. The ambulance service in Wales in particular is bad. My mum, who unfortunately died earlier this year at 103, she fell in a nursing home and broke her hip. And she had to wait 12 hours for an ambulance to take her to Hereford Hospital.
And you're not alone, Helen, you're not alone there wanting maybe more control to come back to the UK. People are concerned now of the breaking up of the union, and devolution isn't delivering what people thought it would. Gary, oh, you've just disappeared. Oh, we've got you back.
We've got half of Gary.
Right, Gary, what other things are concerning you this week and at the moment?
Well, net zero is my bugbear this week. It really is. What are politicians thinking about when they talk about net zero? I mean, we all want to live in a cleaner, healthier country for our kids and grandkids. I agree with that. But I don't get it. I just don't get net zero. We're all... What are these windmills? Everywhere I drive now, I see windmills, and we can't store that energy. There's no way we can store it at the moment. So we are going to be reliant on fossil fuels. People are just so anti it. I mean, one thing that gets me, yes.
Gary, thank you. I'm with you 100%. Thank you very much for joining us. And you, Helen, we're sorry to hear about your mum, but that was certainly a ripe old age, 103. But thank you both, Helen and Gary, for joining us today.
And most of our viewers will agree with everything they said.
Absolutely. Now, that's it for the first hour, but don't go anywhere. Coming up, we'll be discussing the tragic case of Kaylea Titford, looking ahead to the King's coronation and talking about Valentine's Day. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome back to the Saturday Morning Show with me and Phil. Coming up in this hour, Carol Malone is still here giving us her take on the day's news.
We'll be taking a closer look at the Kaylea Titford case after the morbidly obese girl's father was found guilty of gross negligence manslaughter this week.
And next week, yes, it's Valentine's Day. Did you hear that, Phil? Next week, it's Valentine's Day.
Make a note of that.
And if you're still looking for a date, we've got just the man for you. No, it's not Phil. It's the founder of multiple separate dating apps.
And we'll be looking ahead to the King's coronation and talking all things royal.
Lots of you have been getting in touch so far this morning, but keep those views coming in to GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews. But before we start, here's the latest headlines with Ray.
It's 11:01. Here's the latest. The death toll from Monday's deadly earthquakes in southern Turkey and northern Syria has now surpassed 24,000. Despite the conditions, rescuers continue to find some survivors in the rubble more than 120 hours since the disaster struck. Meanwhile, Turkey's President Erdogan has said authorities should have reacted faster. Reyhan Baysan is a Turkish journalist. She told us the country was not prepared despite warnings.
Thousands of buildings have been collapsed. So where are they going to put all these debris away? And of course, like graveyards, morgues, these are all huge problems right now. Turkey wasn't prepared for this, even though people were warning about this. Like professors, they warned about this upcoming earthquake.
Well, meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council is set to hold talks next week on delivering aid to rebel-held areas in Syria. Currently, help to the northwest of the country can only be delivered by one Turkish border crossing. Syria's ally Russia does not back the aid expansion, saying it goes against the country's sovereignty. However, the UN Secretary-General says the Council has been too slow to act. The Shadow Home Secretary has described protests outside a migrant hotel in Merseyside as shameful and appalling. Yvette Cooper made the comments after 3 people were arrested on suspicion of violent disorder in Knowsley. Witnesses described the scene as being like a war zone as demonstrators threw missiles and set fire to a police van. Security has been increased following the incident with reinforced fencing and a bigger police presence. Local MP Sir George Howarth says the protest was triggered by misinformation, claiming that refugees were feather-bedded. The Education Secretary could be set to challenge the Home Office's plans to cut migration. Speaking to the Financial Times, Gillian Keegan described the financial boost from international students to British universities as hugely valuable. She wants to increase the revenue that they bring from around £26 billion to £35 billion by 2030. However, the Home Secretary is currently reviewing the eligibility of students' work visas and their ability to bring dependents to Britain. As the search for missing mum Nicola Bulley enters its 16th day, her partner says he wants to keep all options open about her disappearance. Paul Ansell was speaking to 5 News. Lancashire police say they suspect the mother of 2 fell into the River Wyre, but no trace of her has been found. They're now focusing their search further downstream and out towards the coast. Despite this, Mr Ansell says his gut instinct tells him she did not fall into the river.
Personally, I want every house, every garage, every outbuilding, the land scrutinised. I want it all searched. I want it all scrutinised. Every piece of it, no matter how tiny. Just please, just come forward with it, please.
A World War II bomb has exploded in Great Yarmouth. The blast happened as attempts were being made to disarm the explosives. Norfolk police say no one was hurt. Emergency services declared a major incident on Tuesday after the bomb was discovered during dredging work in the River Yea. The US military has shot down an unidentified object flying over Alaska. President Joe Biden made the decision to bring down the craft, which is the size of a small car. The UFO, which was flying at 40,000 feet, was considered a risk to passenger jets. It follows the downing last week of a Chinese surveillance balloon which was flying over the United States. And the coronation emblem for King Charles and the Queen Consort has now been unveiled. It was created by former Apple designer Sir Johnny Ive. It features an image of St Edward's crown, which will be used to crown the monarch, and was inspired by the King's love of nature. The emblem also includes the Rose of England, the Thistle of Scotland, the Daffodil of Wales, and the Shamrock of Northern Ireland. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get straight back to Esther and Phil.
Thanks there, Ray. Lots of you have been getting in touch, particularly after the debate there we had about the death penalty.
Yeah, I love what David has to say here. I understand the sentiment, but cannot support the death penalty. But I would support the killers working 8 hours a day producing electricity from pedal bikes as an idea. Sitting there doing nothing and costing the taxpayer really irritates me.
And Duncan says the justice system and the police need to start getting things right before you start giving them the power to execute people.
Jeff says if no death penalty, then a life sentence must mean life. And Casey says capital punishment should be introduced for horrific murders, i.e. terrorism and child killers. A degree system installed and guilty beyond doubt.
Well, we're joined again in the studio by Daily Express columnist Carol Malone. There's one of them here, one of these. Carol Malone is spot on with her comments this morning. That was Peter there at the band, so I just wanted to read that out as well. But we've been looking at the Nicola Bulley case.
Yeah. This has taken a really interesting turn in the last 24 hours. Nicola Bulley's partner, a guy called Paul Ansell, which we heard in your report there, he's now saying that he doesn't think she went into the river, and he's asking police to look elsewhere. Now, he's not the first one to say that. I had a chat with Peter Faulding, the guy who was the diving expert, who he is the best in his field, and his equipment he can spot a twig on a riverbed, and he said she is not in that river, and he couldn't understand why police kept on saying she was. He said, you know, they need to be looking. He's done a big interview in one of the papers today, and he's saying that they have to start searching the fields. And what I thought was really interesting on Friday, I heard the police chief of the Lancs police chief, called Pauline Clare. I heard her saying this is a missing persons inquiry. You cannot say that at this point in the inquiry, especially when, you know, because she was suggesting that she had gone into the river. And that stops people looking. When the suggestion is that she has died in the water, people they don't keep their eyes open then. So if something terrible has happened to her, which Paul Ansell is saying, look in the fields, look in the surrounding areas, go and check every house in the village. I think he's kind of right. The police seem to have decided on what's happened to her without any evidence.
And I think his thing is, please keep your mind open. It could be anything. You should be following all lines of inquiry.
Yes,
and that's what he's saying. People don't just vanish into thin air.
Yes.
What could be the other reasons that she might have disappeared? And I agree with that. And there was another article by Janice Street Porter in the paper today. So, will everybody stop being sleuths? They're all going down the scene, giving their version, TikTok, causing more distress to the people. But I wonder if the pressure of everybody else with all of their suggestions might keep the police there. And I know it's a horrible way to have to do it, but are they not keeping the focus on this case, all of those people going to the area and being sleuths?
In my job, what you do when a murder happens, what the police tend to do is they give the media a line every day because they want to keep front page headlines every day, because they know the public in the end will stop looking, because if it's not in their faces every day, they're going to move on and do other things. And so that is happening here, but I think for all the wrong reasons. I think the police are coming out of this quite badly. You can't pronounce what you think has happened without any evidence. And I think that is the problem. And now you have this guy Peter Faulding. He's saying, you know, because the suggestion was today by the cops that she might have gone to sea, he's saying that's not possible. The currents in that river are so slow and it is so shallow there that she will not have gone out to sea. So he's saying, and I mean, I asked him outright the other day, did he think something else had happened to her? And he said yes. So I'm thinking, why, if the expert they've employed to do that,
yes,
why they're not listening
why
to
they
him?
do it? Phil, another story?
Well, I was looking into because it's Valentine. Are you romantic, Carol?
I am, but I'm not entirely sure my husband is, no.
Well, it certainly won't be. It certainly won't be if he reads page 3 of the Daily Mail today. And the headline is "The Cost of Loving Crisis."
Oh, not the living, like
No,
that, the way
cost
they've
of
done
living
that,
crisis.
the cost of loving crisis.
Apparently, flowers and meals and all the rest of it, Valentine's Day has gone through, the price of which have gone through the roof. Red roses and other flowers are up at least 10 to 15%. I don't know.
Phil, has a bloke written that story?
Yeah, the other thing...
Is it a bloke that's written that story?
Say it's dear to
It
take...
was a bloke,
Say it's a dear to take your wife or your girlfriend out. How about this? Go shopping and cook.
Yes, there's that.
See what I mean? There's something else you can do.
But the thing is, the price of flowers and chocolates and dinners have always rocketed up on Valentine's Day. Yeah. This is just blokes trying to find a way out of it.
Buy them in January.
I'm persuaded by this article. It seems Fortnum and Mason offer a Valentine's Day hamper, which has gone up from £125 last year to £145 this year, so you can roll that out for receiving one of those.
Listen, if you're buying a hamper from Fortnum and Mason's for your missus, you could afford the extra 20 quid.
I'm much happier thinking of putting you in a pinny and getting you in front of the cooker to cook a meal.
I am romantic because I'm going to the football next Tuesday night to watch Bradford City play.
So what's romantic about that for?
I'm glad to get rid of him. I'm going out with my mates.
But do you buy her presents? Do you buy her romantic presents?
He is. He pretends to be this. He's the far more romantic of the two of us. But anyway, how about Sex in the City?
Oh, I'm so excited.
Links between Valentine's Day to Sex in the City.
So excited by this. OK, so the Mail today run the story. So the new Sex in the City is called And Just Like That. It's a bit like Tommy Cooter, just like that. Anyway, so there's a big picture of Carrie kissing Aidan Shaw. Do you remember Aidan Shaw?
I do, indeed. He was the one who made the furniture.
He was the one I wanted her to be with because I thought he was a very honest guy. He was moral. He was also red hot as well. He was like 6'5" and amazing. And
he was a bit of a rock guy, wasn't he? He was a bit of his jeans and his leather, slightly longer hair.
And you know he's married to what do you call the girl in real life? Well, who's the girl who was in 10? Bo Derek. He's been with Bo Derek for 20 years, which also makes me think everything I think about him is true because if she's kept him for 20 years, he's all right. But now they're snogging in the Mail today, and there's a picture of his hand, and he doesn't have his wedding ring on, which means he's not cheating on it. He's so bored. Just pretend you're interested.
He could have just taken his wedding ring off, you know. It doesn't mean that he's not cheating.
Because that's the point of Aidan. He's moral.
Oh.
Remember, he left her because she cheated.
He was too nice. And this was the story, wasn't it? Too nice a guy. The girl gets bored and moved on. She went back to Big, who had the Peloton issue.
Yeah, well, he did have the Peloton. Yeah,
he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. But
too much exercise, unhealthy for you.
I feel I've joined the cast of Loose Women.
Maybe in more ways than one, who knows?
But the thing, this is exactly the person she should end up with. Mind you, he will have left because in the series he's married. He's got a wife and 2 kids, so he's obviously left her. But I think they should be together.
OK, but one final, because we had such a sort of heavy news all day. We were looking for a bit of brevity, a bit of lightness here. The other one, which was a bit like a horror show, Madonna's face.
Oh, my good God. I mean, you know what? If when she was at the Grammys, if someone hadn't said it was Madonna, I would not have known. What on earth has she done to herself? It looks like her face is being pumped up with a bicycle pump. And she's going berserk now. She's screaming that people are criticising her being ageist and misogynistic. No, she's being ageist because she's perpetuating this myth that to be relevant when you're older, you have to look young. And that's nonsense. I nearly said a bad word there. I know you said that's something else.
Our viewers could cope with that. Our viewers could cope with that. But you're right. She is trying to be eternally youthful, which you can't be. I have to say, about a year or so ago.
You are.
She is.
So
he's being romantic now.
Creeping, bit of crawling, does nobody any harm.
I don't need to buy any flowers on Valentine's Day.
But a year ago, when you see the pictures of her, it looked, I thought, oh my goodness, can't believe it. She looked younger than her daughter. But in real life, it is scary. You can't keep pumping your face up.
But she's gone beyond what she was last year. There's a lot more gone in there since last year. And I read one headline yesterday that said, well, if she's happy with what she sees when she looks in the mirror, well, that's all that's important. No, it's not, because if she's happy with what she sees in the mirror, there's something she's got more wrong with than a few too many injectables.
I agree. We're going to keep you in for the next item, because we thought this might make you laugh. This is it's an app. It's a brand new app, dating app. Yeah, brand new website is launching this Valentine's Day, which is specifically targeting long-term singletons. I'm not saying you're long-term singletons,
no,
but I
I'm
thought you might be interested in
I'm long-term married.
It's for people desperate to meet someone.
David Minns is the man behind the Desperate Dating app, and some of his past creations include platforms for men in all shapes and sizes. I'm not sure what you mean by that, David, but we'll probably try and keep this as clean as possible.
Daytime show, children watching.
As well as gaming fans and age gap daters.
Well, we're delighted to say, I'm going to call him Dating Dave, now joins us. So, Dave, tell us about your dating app. You're not selling it well for me if it's for desperate people.
Yeah, so I focus on making dating apps and dating sites for niches, because if you take all of the single people on all of the major apps, it's pretty much everyone on the entire planet, and that's really difficult to narrow down. So I take people with special interests or hobbies or lifestyle choices, bring them together and sort of make that connection a little bit easier. So as you said, my latest one is for people who are desperate to date. So those are people who have been single for too long. And I ran a survey across my entire dating network. And in the UK, 27% of people will claim themselves to be desperate. So they'll put their hands up and say, I am desperate for a date, or I'm desperate for a partner. So that's the idea, is to bring these people together and hopefully have a bit more success than they have in other places.
And how exactly are you going to do that? Are you then getting that 27%, filtering out everybody else who isn't desperate, bringing that 27% together and pushing them together? How are you doing it?
Yes, that's right. I mean, there's a little bit of an honesty policy. So if someone is sort of cheating and they've only been single a week, it's very hard to do that. But hopefully, the brand name and everything that goes with it makes people, puts that sort of barrier in. And from talking to the people that have already signed up, I've got people who have been single for over 20 years on the. Yes, and it's really sort of with age. The younger generation, if you're 18, they're probably maybe only single for a couple of weeks before they meet somebody else. But as people get older, then those gaps start to get bigger and bigger and can easily turn into decades.
Carol, go on.
Dave, can I ask you a question? Okay, I was really intrigued when you said you take on people, you do dating for people with special interests, hobbies and lifestyle choices. Give me an example of what you're talking about there. What's a special interest or what's a lifestyle choice?
Okay, so special interest would be like people who are into gaming, so game consoles. And I always try to come up with quirky names, so that brand is called Joystick. So
but they're never going to talk to anybody because they're always on the gaming consoles. No wonder they haven't got a relationship.
But they're online. They could have an online relationship. They could pretend they were, I don't know, people in a game. Some of the other ones then that you've got there, some of your other quirky hobbies.
Yeah, so for then, well, not on the hobby side, but for lifestyle, I have a luxury dating site for the successful or millionaires, and then general sort of mainstream dating, casual dating that's sort of quite popular as well for people not looking for serious relationships. And then a couple that you've kind of hinted at are based on men's geometry, but we won't go into too much detail about those maybe on an early morning show. But those are two very popular ones.
My word.
Is that sort of bigger than average, smaller than average? What are you focusing on?
Yeah, both. So I have a site for smaller than average and bigger than average. But
have you got any stories of people you've brought together? Have you got any stories of people you've brought together?
Yes, yeah. So it gets some success stories, but people are on the smaller, the smaller than average. People are not that willing to kind of come on the air and talk about that, and so they kind of keep that to themselves. Those are very popular brands.
Dating Dave, you've certainly made us smile today. We'll be checking out those, whichever, for hobbies, luxury dating.
Yes. You check it out. I'm not checking it out.
Well, we'll check it out. It's research for the audience, Carol, not for myself, for the audience.
I'm not buying the stuff about he places millionaires, multimillionaires. I mean, they're not desperate. Multimillionaires aren't desperate, are they?
No.
People might think that you went on a desperate dating app to find me.
Oh, no. Definitely not. Look, he's now trying to get sympathy. He flattered before, and now he's going for sympathy.
No,
what
he's
a man
getting rid of buying flowers for Valentine's Day. That's what he's doing. You're not getting a card or flowers now.
Is that what you think that was? That bit of grovelling meant you're not getting anything. Carol, I think you're onto something.
There was somebody else here actually in the papers who said, Hugh Fernley-Whittinstall said that you shouldn't buy flowers or Valentine's cards this year because it's bad for the environment. So there you go.
Do you know, I've heard some rubbish. If there's one way to get rid of net zero, it's that, isn't it? You can't buy presents. Phil, no, forget it. Carol and I are going out on February the 14th. Coming up, we'll be looking at the King's coronation plans, with Buckingham Palace unveiling Charles' coronation emblem yesterday. So we're going to have a break, but don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
and right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 11:24 now. Lots of you have been getting in touch again, particularly about the
death penalty.
The death penalty.
Death penalty debate. Pauline says, I feel we need more MPs like Lee Anderson. My hubby and I totally agree with him about the death penalty. There's no deterrent for serious crimes in this country. There's more human rights for criminals than victims. Cynthia says, I'm not hearing much sympathy for the victims of crime, murder and their families. I hear too much sympathy for the perpetrator. There are more murders daily than anyone who is convicted wrongly.
Yeah, and Victor there's talking about the deterrent principle. What have we got? And this could be it. Now, on a different note, Jeremy, talking about one of our contributors on Speaker's Corner, one of our viewers said, Helen Fawcett, your viewer on the programme, speaks for many thousands of Welsh people. Devolution is not working. She came out clear and bold on that, didn't she, Helen?
Yes, absolutely. And we were also talking about the demonstration in Knowsley last night about outside the hotel where asylum seekers are. Lots of comments about that too. Sue says, Esther is so right. If the protesters are far right, why are the pro-immigrants not far left? I'm so tired of anyone not agreeing to the media being referred to as far right. Love the programme, so good to hear common sense.
And this is what upsets people when they use a capture all. You don't agree with their views, they're far right. Not like they've got a different view. And I think this upsets a lot of people. I think they need to be far more careful in how they describe people. Definitely got our viewers going, that one.
Absolutely. Now, yesterday, Buckingham Palace unveiled a coronation emblem inspired by the King's love of nature and the happy optimism of spring.
There is also much talk over who will and won't be making the official guest list. A public ballot also opened yesterday for 10,000 free tickets for a star-studded concert at Windsor Castle to mark this historic day.
Joining us now to tell us more is royal commentator and writer Michael Cole. Michael, thank you ever so much for joining us. I guess the first question that everybody wants to know the answer to is, are Harry and Meghan going to be coming to the coronation? What do you think?
Well, good morning, Esther. Good morning, Philip. And also greetings to your distinguished guest, Carol. That, of course, you've asked the key question, have you not? Only 84 days to go now, only 84 days of speculation. We're all getting excited about it. I think what we can say, definitely, is that the King is playing a blinder here because he allowed it to be known from the very beginning that his second son and his son's wife would be perfectly welcome to come to the coronation. Now, that leaves it to them, Harry and Meghan, otherwise known as the Montecito money machine, to decide whether they can spare to leave the time to leave California to come here for May the 6th. Now, if they refused, that would look a little bit petty and mean-spirited. But if they accepted, they would leave themselves open, would they not, to the charge of hypocrisy, because they've been throwing far and wide accusations about various members of the royal family in books and on television. So if they came and then meekly sat in the Abbey and took their places and behaved themselves for a change, it would look as if they wanted it both sides of the street. So we don't know yet, is the short answer about that.
So, Michael, what I'd say, it's definitely a master stroke by Charles, King Charles there, but other people would say, but you know what, Meghan has no shame and she will use it and Harry will use it as a platform for their next Netflix series and to endorse to the Americans they are part of the royal household.
Well, indeed, Esther. I mean, you make an extremely good point there. And we don't quite know what they're going to do. They say that they've said enough about the royal family, they've cashed in sufficiently for the time being. But who's to say they wouldn't go back and gnaw the same old bone again? But listen, I think we need, on this programme in particular, we always have a sense of historical perspective. Things have been worse, Esther. I mean, when George IV was crowned in 1820, his wife, Queen Caroline, was barred from the ceremony, and the poor woman was banging on the door of Westminster Abbey and not being allowed in. And she was very popular, actually, with the British people. And when she died three weeks later, I mean, they lined the streets to send her off back to Brunswick in Germany. So there have been worse. And when you look at, I mean, we all have families. Look at the American royal family, the Kennedys. When Jackie Kennedy married Jack, her father, Black Jack Bouvier, was dead drunk and he couldn't give her away, and he slept throughout the wedding ceremony. So in all of these families, whether they're royal or not, these problems do arise.
I think I'd pay to watch Meghan banging on the door of the to be late. That'd certainly go down well on Netflix.
She's doing it in a very different way, though, doesn't she? She has friends of hers talking about how they'd love to be invited. So they bang on the door on social media now rather than physically done there. But I think this... does this keep the royal family relevant, though, having these trials and tribulations between the sons?
Of course it does. I mean, there's never any shortage of royal stories. And, you know, Her Majesty the Queen once said to me, you know, I have to be seen to be believed. 50% of being royal is being seen. The other 50% is also important. But that's very much part of it. And, but, you know, to be quite serious for a moment, the coronation is absolutely central to our way of life. It is the center of our constitutional monarchy. And one thing about the British coronation ceremony, which is unique, is there is a moment during the ceremonial when everybody, 2,000 people there, are asked, do they accept the Queen, the new king, the new monarch? And they, of course, they shout, yes, they do. They do so. But that is quite rare. And of course, we are ruled by consent. We are governed by our consent. Who knows more about that than you two? You stand for election, and bravely so. And that is very important to our constitution and how we conduct things. The king reigns, he doesn't rule, but it's within the constitution, and we saw that at the wonderful ceremony of accessions.
And finally, just very quickly, do you think if Meghan does come over, I know there's been polls, people saying we don't want them to come here, they've been so awful to our royal family. Do you think we'll be gracious as a country, we'll accept them, they'll come here? Do you think that's the sort of people we are?
I absolutely do, and I don't believe the British people ever boo. They don't. They if they want to express displeasure, they can do it by silence, which is far more eloquent than any booing. But, you know, I'm afraid I can't let her have my ticket because I'm probably not going to get one. And maybe I'll be sitting where you are now talking about it. But I do remember the last coronation quite vividly when I was 10 years old. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that too.
We'll have you here. Michael Cole, thank you very much indeed. Wonderful to have you on the show.
I just thought it's funny, the King's been gracious in inviting her, but I mean, he wouldn't be the first person to invite somebody to something and hope they don't come.
Well, absolutely. There might be an element of that, but it was a masterstroke. If you're playing a game of chess, he's definitely got a check, if not a checkmate.
Absolutely. Now, coming up, we'll be taking a closer look at the Kaylea Titford case after the morbidly obese girl's father was found guilty of gross negligence manslaughter this week. But now it's time for the latest headlines with Ray.
Good morning, 11:32. Here's the latest. The death toll from Monday's deadly earthquakes in southern Turkey and northern Syria has now surpassed 24,000. Despite the conditions, rescuers continue to find some survivors in the rubble. Turkey's President Erdogan has said authorities should have reacted faster. Mehmet Selik is a journalist in Turkey. He told us rescuers haven't given up hope.
Nearly 150,000 people currently are working in the earthquake zones with doctors, with rescue teams, with just volunteers. I mean, the whole country has mobilized to make sure that at least one life can be saved with each operation that is taking place currently.
Well, meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council is set to hold talks next week on delivering aid to rebel-held areas in Syria. Currently, help to the northwest of the country can only be delivered by one Turkish border crossing. Syria's ally Russia does not back the aid expansion, saying it goes against the country's sovereignty. The Shadow Home Secretary has described protests outside a migrant hotel in Merseyside as shameful and appalling. Yvette Cooper made the comments after 3 people were arrested on suspicion of violent disorder in Knowsley. Witnesses described the scene as being like a war zone as demonstrators threw missiles and set fire to a police van. Security has been increased following the incident with reinforced fencing and a police presence. As the search for missing mum Nicola Bully enters its 16th day, her partner says his gut instinct tells him she did not fall into the river. Paul Ansell was speaking to 5 News. Lancashire police say they suspect the mother of 2 fell into the River Wyre, but no trace has been found. They've now focused their attention on further downstream and towards the coast. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Esther and Phil in just a moment.
Thanks, Ray. Again, some of your comments here. I love this one from Duncan. It's amazing how everyone's been brainwashed into thinking Valentine's Day is for couples. It's for single people, and was originally it was to make it easier to say to somebody, will you be my Valentine?
Well said, Duncan. Another reason why Esther isn't going to get a card and flowers this year. I owe you one. Rebecca says, I was single for 17 years, bringing up my daughter single-handedly. It was the right choice to stay on my own. I have now met a fantastic partner who was introduced by a friend. I would never have used a dating app.
And I love this one by Ruby. She says, King Charles should do as the late Queen Elizabeth did. The Sussexes aren't working royals and had to sit alongside Eugenie. Were not allowed on the balcony either. That's the way to treat them.
And we also we were talking earlier about the chap who was fining a school for not being there for going out on strike after he'd been fined for taking his kids out. Graham agrees with that particular parent. He says, I've been saying for years parents should be compensated for teachers deserting their pupils. What is the difference between parents taking children out of school and teachers or heads deciding or allowing teachers to willfully neglect children's education? Let's hope it catches on.
Yeah, you see, lots of people were also emailing in today saying this is the voice of common sense, this show and this channel, and that just,
well, our viewers,
that's just an
viewers certainly are.
example.
Now let's welcome broadcaster and lawyer Andrew Eborn to discuss the truly horrific case of Kaylea Titford. Andrew, for people who don't know about it, Phil...
You want to explain
I will.
this
It's
case?
a really tragic case. Kaylea Titford, she was 16 years old. She suffered from spina bifida. And unfortunately, during lockdown, she became bedridden. And basically, there was some of the most appalling conditions ever. Her clothes were all soiled. There were maggots crawling over her. And truly, truly tragic. And sadly, she died on around the 19th or 20th of October. They're not quite sure when.
Yeah, we're showing some pictures of her there. So one of them was, you know, they hadn't looked after her. You know, she's overweight. She wasn't being looked after. But as you say, it was the horrendous conditions which she was living in. You know, soiled, dirty bedding, maggots.
It was absolutely appalling. She was 23 stone. She ballooned up, and previously she used to love basketball. And she was even possibly a contender for the Paralympics, they were saying. What happened is both...
she had spina bifida.
And then she had spina bifida and that sort of stuff. Both her parents were charged with basically manslaughter by gross neglect. Her mother, Sarah Lloyd-Jones, pleaded guilty, but her father said, I have no responsibility. I didn't do anything to her at all. And he tried to... Well, he pleaded not guilty. The jury found them both found him guilty as well.
Because the mum said, I am guilty.
Yeah, the mum said she was guilty. She said it was basically what it is. It's gross negligence is caused, manslaughter by gross negligence. And there are basically 4 elements to that. The defendant, basically there was a duty of care, which clearly there was. They breached that duty of care. Yeah. And as a result, it caused harm to the victim. The victim died. So really, really tragic case. They've both been found guilty now. Sentencing is going to take place on the 1st of March. And as with all these things, they look at culpability, they look at mitigating circumstances, because in lockdown, obviously there's tremendous pressure and so on and so forth. All of that evidence is going to come out, but it's a truly horrific case.
What was the dad's defence? Well, when he said, I'm not guilty, what was his defence?
He basically said he left everything to the mother. Mm-hmm. He said, I don't do anything at home, and actually it was the social services, the health and social services, who were to blame, because they worked on that sort of premise.
I mean, one of the elements of this is apparently she was restricted to a bed for 6 months since the start of the lockdown. The lockdown started and she hadn't moved out of her bed for 6 months. I just wondered, what I was interested in, Andrew, about this case is, I mean, I don't know which elements of this were the culpable things. I mean, obviously the fly-infested room, the soiled clothing, all that is terrible. But also about the fact that they'd allowed her weight to balloon to 23 stone.
Yes.
And I just wondered whether or not, you know, the other parents could be liable for their children's gross obesity? Is that
and it does raise that issue, absolutely. They basically, as a parent, you have a parental responsibility for your children, and that includes their mental and physical well-being. So it could indeed be the case, and the jury felt that they were to blame for the ballooning weight. They should have done something about it. They ordered takeaways. They didn't take her out of the bed and get the appropriate services in to look after her. So it was a real issue.
I mean, how unusual? I mean, thankfully, presumably, these cases are very unusual. I mean, I hadn't heard of gross negligence and manslaughter before.
Well, normally, I mean, you have murder if you do it with intent, and then there's manslaughter and so on and so forth. But by gross negligence is where you owe that duty of care. And the penalties can range from 1 year to 18 years in prison. And as with all these things, they look at the culpability, to what degree were they at fault. But also then you look at mitigating circumstances, aggravating circumstances, and look at that. And you might remember, we spoke about this beforehand, on 28th of July 2022, Judge Sarah Munro showed the first ever sentencing. It was televised, of Ben Oliver. So no doubt this will be a case where people will see the sentencing.
I think the sentencing's interesting, though, isn't it? Because, I mean, whatever they get on this range of sentences, 1 to 18 years, I think there'll be lots of people say it isn't enough. Even if they got the maximum sentence, I would say lots of people would think 18 years for treating their daughter in such an appalling manner. I mean, that can't...
It was sadistic. I mean, it was bordering on sadistic, the way she was left and not supported.
It was absolutely awful. And that's what will happen. That will come out. That they will turn around and say, look, who's to blame and to what extent on that scale? Because justice should not just be done, but be seen to be done.
Do you think as well, this parental responsibility, a big debate happening within the country, how much should a parent be looking after a child? It will go to, you know, are you eating, you know, are you making sure they eat well? Are they doing exercise? Are they getting education? Are they learning? Do you think, is this, in a rather macabre, awful way, a positive thing to put the focus back onto parent responsibility, not the state, not somebody else, but parental responsibility?
If some good can come out of it, you're absolutely right, Esther. I think to turn around and say, look, you have responsibility for your children, whether they're ballooning in weight, to make sure they get the appropriate nutrition and so on and so forth, but also to make sure they're not neglected. And these were squalid and inhuman conditions. I mean, absolutely appalling. You've seen some of the pictures already. You need to look after people. And if that one lesson can be learnt, then some good comes out of it.
Because I think for so long now, people have been saying, oh, the state needs to do this, whatever it is, whether it is sort of feeding your children, looking after your children, more care of children. This is a reversal now, saying, no, the buck stops with you. You are the parent.
And I think, well, it does, but also at the Health and Social Service, there are questions to be asked, and they can be corporate manslaughter and that sort of thing. So it's both, but it doesn't negate your responsibility.
Andrew, thank you very much, as ever, for joining us. Terrible case. Now, coming up, the Super Bowl takes place tomorrow when the Kansas City Chiefs play the Philadelphia Eagles. It's watched by hundreds of millions around the world, so it's no wonder that a 30-second advert can cost a whopping $7 million. We'll be talking to an advertising expert about the biggest commercials this year, so stay with us.
I wonder how much the coronation you could get for that as well. Millions around the world watching that. Don't go anywhere.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. All ready to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 11:44. Now, the Super Bowl will take place tomorrow night, and it will see the Philadelphia Eagles take on the Kansas City Chiefs in a showdown in Arizona.
It's one of the biggest sporting occasions in the world, with hundreds of millions of people tuning in across the globe. So it's no wonder a 30-second advertisement can cost as much as $7 million. Wow.
Join us now to discuss the big advert schedule for this year and how valuable an advertisement during the Super Bowl really is. It's the founder and CEO of Believe Advertising and PR, Adrian Falk.
I can't believe the cost of that advert.
Adrian, I mean, $7 million for 30 seconds. I mean, how on earth can anyone justify that?
Good morning, Esther and Phil, and thank you so much for having me on air. Yes, look, a whopping $7 million US for just one 30-second ad. Now, don't forget, that's just for the media spot, and you need to also include production. You have to pay for talent. The trend lately now is to have a lot of celebrities, so you can imagine how much that would even cost. And to get the message out there, you need to buy several ads. You can't just rely on one spot. So it comes down to creativity and having a brilliant concept to really make the ad go viral, which a lot of these international brands rely on.
Adrian, how does a company assess the return on that massive investment?
Good question. So essentially what the trend's been, and I've seen it this year for 2023, is they're now starting to do a lot of teasers. So they'll do 15-second teasers. Pepsi Max is relaunching at the Super Bowl with a new taste, and they've engaged Ben Stiller and also Steve Martin. So they're doing teasers with them. I kind of feel like they're falling a little bit flat, pardon the pun. But who knows what the ad will be like tomorrow when we watch the Super Bowl tomorrow night. So I guess to build momentum, they really need to get the teasers and to get some hype about it so they can get that viral aspect to it.
Pressure must be on the creative teams to do a good advert for that. I mean, what are the best ones? And I guess it limits who can make your advert as well.
Exactly. Look, there's been some iconic ads over the year, and it kind of kicked off with Michael Jackson's ad back in 1984 for Pepsi. And that's when they sort of really upped their ante. And from then, brands started jumping on the bandwagon, raising the bar with getting their name out there and endorsing with celebrities and whatnot, and really making it like a spectacular. In fact, there's studies that show that 18% of people actually are watching the Super Bowl, not for the game itself, but actually for the advertisements.
Well, I know they're also watching for the singers.
And how there's so many news stories just alone on the ads. The return on investment is really quite high because there's so much invaluable publicity about the ads out there.
I'm thinking about the King's coronation, and when you're talking eyeballs on an event, well, we'll have the world looking on that. So you, as an advertising guru, as it were, would that not be one of the ultimate events in the world to get advertising on?
Without a doubt. And when you think about it, when we watch and consume media or TV, generally, when the ad break comes on, we'd normally make a cup of tea, go to the loo, but now everyone's glued to their TV because the ads is the entertaining part, along with the halftime show as well. And this year we've got Rihanna that's going to be doing a 12 to 15-minute spectacular. And Apple's jumped on board to be the halftime sponsor, and they've really taken it to a next level this year. They've got an interactive experience with the audience where with the Shazam app, you can literally download exclusive behind-the-scenes press conferences with Rihanna that's happening tomorrow. There's wallpapers for your phone, interactive experiences with listening to her music and playlists and whatnot as well. So it's becoming a real immersive I guess, experience alone.
Adrian Falk, thank you very much indeed for telling us what's going on in between the massive event and how much money can be made that way. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Phil.
Well, it's now time to take a look at the stories from the world of showbiz and sport with the marvellous Hayley Palmer and the less marvellous Aidan McGee.
Oh, I love
that. Will you be watching the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I will actually. I'll be staying
Will you be watching the Super Bowl or the adverts or the singers in between?
Well, probably a bit of both, actually. Well, all of them. I went to the NBA playoff in 2008. Harry Connick Jr. was on during the interval, so that was worth seeing. But how many avocados are going to be consumed in the States tomorrow night, do you think? Can we have a guess?
Avocados?
Yeah, how many?
Are you going to say something like 300 million?
No, not that many.
50 million. That's how many. I was giving him one a person.
That's twice your daily allowance. But,
yeah, but go on, 50 million.
4,000 tonnes of avocado. So I don't know how many avocados that is.
That was a cheat of a question.
Well, I don't know. I mean, listen,
a lot, and that's all with the corn chips and the avocado.
1 in 7 households order takeaway. 60% of that will be pizza, so if everyone fancies a slice of that.
Who's going to win?
I think the Philadelphia Eagles are slight favourites. I take them to win. It's at the State Farm Stadium in Glendale.
And are you, Hayley, going to be watching the halftime performances?
Definitely not. I should be watching the Brit Awards, which are on tonight. And if you want some Hayley predictions, I know I'm not good at sport predictions. To everyone on Twitter, I got it badly wrong in the summer, but I am good at showbiz predictions. And I'm going to say tonight that Harry Styles is going to run away with it. I think he's going to win Best Album of the Year and British Artist of the Year. And I really hope Sam Ryder gets the Newcomer Award because he deserves that, definitely. And also Lizzo, About Damn Time. I think she should win the Song of the Year. So there are my predictions. You heard it here first.
Now, I was interested in what Olivia Attwood had to say.
Yes.
Go on.
She said on a podcast that she doesn't think children should be allowed at weddings. Now, I love children. I used to be a dance teacher. I used to teach children, and I like organised fun. So I'm like, we're going to do this, and you're going to do what I say, and then I'm going to hand you back to your parents. So I'm very much like that. So I kind of get where she is coming from, that sometimes, you know, it can be a little bit distracting, off-putting. Everyone's got their own rules. My mum said at her wedding she didn't have any children.
You agree with her, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you agree with her?
I agree.
Well, I'd say, you know, it's a family occasion, and if you want all generations of family, well, I would have kids, Stacey, because I think you can't have a well-behaved kid later in life if they're not taught at these important events to be well-behaved. So I'm saying well-behaved children.
Want to scream
but everyone will just go home at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, but you can just say you must be well-behaved. And most parents, if they
don't know how to behave at 2 years old,
adults don't all the time.
No, but if they do, then usually parents quickly take them out of the service, don't they? The parents are usually mortified when their kids have... So, no, I think it's a family occasion. I wouldn't be barring kids from a wedding.
Really?
Wow.
Well,
no, I wouldn't be barring kids. I'd just make sure they were well-behaved. And if they weren't, I'd name them and shame them all the back forever. Photographic evidence for their 21st birthday.
In my experience, it's the adults who need to be taught how to behave.
So are we banning parents from the weddings and allowing the kids to go?
Ban everyone. Go to the Caribbean.
It's because he's single, he doesn't want to get married. Nobody should get married if Aidan's not married.
Somebody who might need to be better behaved at Manchester City.
Oh.
Yes, I know. Over 100 charges this week, which, to Esther's delight, might actually see them be relegated. And now it's about profit and loss. It's about sustainability, incomings, outgoings. The upshot of it, though, to keep it brief, is that I think they're going to have to if they're found guilty, and they're going to fight this. They've got Boris Johnson's KC working on the case, Mr Rosen. So I wonder if they might have to relegate them, because going back and retrospectively taking away points and titles and qualification for Champions League is going to be an absolute mess.
Yeah, an uproar, won't
it would. I mean, are you really going to award a Premier League title from 12 years ago to the team that finished second? Oh, great, nice one. Yeah, we won it. But you didn't actually win it on the pitch. You're probably better off relegating the sides. Maybe not relegating to the EFL, because the EFL probably can't accommodate them because of a number of teams. They may have to go down to the National League, which means I can watch them at Bromley.
No, they're not going to relegate them out.
It's possible. Possible. Look at Rangers. Rangers had to go all the way to the bottom, and it took 5 years to get back.
Won't they just relegate them to the Championship with one team fewer being relegated?
Well, how's that fair on the teams in the Premier League and the Championship who are fighting for promotion and spending money chasing their dream?
It wouldn't affect them, because it would just they'd just relegate relegate one fewer team from the Premier League that season.
It's not going to get Bradford into the Premier League. That's what we hope.
Nothing's going to do that.
Six Nations, yeah, big game this afternoon. Number 1 and number 2 in the world, Ireland against France. Ireland have struggled against France in recent years. France were the last team to win in Dublin. It was different, no, Esther, because there were no people there. There were no fans there. Today, raucous 60,000 crowd at the Aviva Stadium. I take Ireland to win.
And what's happening with Kylie?
Well, she has split up from her boyfriend of 5 years because it's a long-distance relationship.
I thought you were going to say it's a long time for her.
It's a long time for her, yeah, and that. And so she's in Australia, he's in England. I just wonder, can long-distance relationships work? Sometimes they can, but it is pretty hard, isn't it, when someone's the other side of the world and you just want to go to Nando's and you can't.
I used to know when mine lived in Southend.
She split up just before Valentine's Day.
That's not a good move.
Is that to
I would have
avoid a
waited
present?
till afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I would have wanted the flowers.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I would have waited to the 15th of February.
You're not getting it.
Mercenary. We're seeing another side now, aren't we?
No,
Going to have children at weddings, going to stay, whether it's after Christmas, after Valentine's Day, to get all of her presents.
Just very quickly, keep Esther happy. Are Liverpool going to beat Everton in the Merseyside derby?
I think it'll be a draw. I don't want to sit on the fence. And I'm going to keep your eye on Valentine's night, my one true love.
Well, Aidan, thank you very much indeed. A win would have been better. Hayley, thank you very much indeed. We're seeing the other side of Hayley. This is it for this week. We've had a great, great time. Join us next week at the same time. But next is Alistair Stewart and friends. Don't go anywhere. It'll be a cracking show today with him.
Good morning and welcome to your latest weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth from the Met Office. Now, the rest of this weekend is going to stay quite mild and dry across the UK, and that's because we've got this mild Atlantic air being brought up by this large area of high pressure from the near continent. That's going to push any weather fronts to skirt across the north of the UK as well, so plenty of dry weather to come. Has been a rather mild start to the day, though, and that's because we've got a blanket of cloud that will dominate through much of the weekend. There will be some sunshine breaking out here and there by the afternoon. This is most likely across parts of Northern Ireland as well as eastern areas of England and Scotland. And in any of that sunshine, it will feel quite warm for the time of year, highs of 12 or possibly 13 degrees by Saturday afternoon. Then as we head through the evening, it's going to stay quite cloudy for the bulk of the UK. We could see the return of some rain and drizzle to the northwest of Scotland. Some clear spells will develop across parts of Wales as well as northeastern Scotland, and that will allow a bit of a chillier night, so a touch of frost is possible here and there by Sunday morning, but for many areas we're going to be well above freezing with all that cloud around. So another cloudy start to the day tomorrow, and that will persist through much of the day, particularly